can't make decisions based on whether people are going to vote for me or not. I can't do that. Because that's like being in business or short-term the stock market, where you're worried about the next quarter's results. If our representatives make decisions based on what they hear in one moment from electorate or from people, and don't do it based on a longer-term view, a view that they really think hard about what the repercussions are and what their values are and how they can really deliver for the riding. And maybe it sounds like you're not listening, but I listen. I listen all the time. That's so important.
Right.
You have to listen. But representing somebody doesn't always mean doing what they want you to do or doing what they say.
Well,
and you'd
really?
be schizophrenic anyway. You'd be schizophrenic because if I listened, if to represent someone I had to do what they said,
Right.
I would be taking diametrically opposed views on every issue.
Right.
Because I get emails from one person who says protect the environment. I get an email from another person who says cut the carbon tax. I get an email from one person who says, condemn, stand for Palestine more strongly. I get something from another person who says help us with anti-Semitism.
Right.
Like, how do you
Yes.
represent a diverse group of people?
Yes.
You listen.
Uh-huh.
You listen. You try and do what you think is the best thing to represent the community as a whole.
Really, it started taking place way back here. Mm-hmm. And I find that gets skipped over so many times. Mm-hmm. And that even along the way of these triumphs, because that's the moment, right, when you get the award or whatever,
Yep.
there's recognition.
Yep.
This person wanted to quit, felt sad, didn't think they were worthy.
Yep.
And
Yep.
people don't get that part.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And then the rest of us who are sitting there feeling not worthy, feeling like we are quitting,
Mm-hmm.
we're like, well, yeah, we're not that person. And I want them to know, hold
You are
on a
that
second.
person.
Yeah.
You are.
And that
Yeah.
person is
No.
you.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Exactly.
like both.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
And that's really what we go after.
Yeah, great.
But as I was kind of like talking to you about it, even what was like last week when we chatted, I was thinking, you know what? I'm almost sure of it. Like, I haven't heard it yet.
Mm-hmm.
I have a feeling that no way you go through all of these years in terms of what you've gone through to get to where you are today, that you haven't had that experience, where there are moments where. So I was like,
so
let
many
me
times.
just
That's
ask
the
you.
problem. That's so many times, right?
Right? So
That's
many
the
times.
problem. Is it happens constantly. I think it happens to everybody constantly.
And I think the maybe for somebody like yourself, maybe the hard part is because it happens so many times. For you, it's like normal. It's like, yeah, you know
it's
what?
always challenging.
Isn't it?
It's always challenging.
Is it?
Every time it happens, you still have to pick yourself back up.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I always think of that song, I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Yes.
They're never keep me
what's
down.
her name? That Champion song?
Yeah,
yes.
exactly. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think there's so many pieces, things like that. It was funny just on the way in this morning, and as we were discussing, I'm not completely up to date culturally on all the things that are going on, but I like listening to the radio sometimes in between. I listen to CBC One often, and for the news updates, and then there was a piece about a musician on today. And his name was Ibrahim, I think Malouf. I don't know if you've heard him, but he just has done a new album called Capacity to Love.
Okay.
And it was so wonderful just listening to this. He started with a quote from Charlie Chaplin.
Right.
And who would think that Charlie Chaplin, you think of Charlie Chaplin, this great actor, this person. I know he did so much more, but the quote was amazing about how much we need love and how much we need to grow. So what I'm saying is it's all these connections, these things that happen, right? And every time you hear something that kind of helps you get yourself back up,
right.
And it can be the smallest thing. It can be something like that that's just focusing on how we all need to love more to address the problems that we're facing.
Yeah.
And when you're dealing with so many, my first thing this morning, a couple first things this morning, looking at an email chain, a woman from Iran an Iranian Canadian, but who is frustrated because she can't get her brother can't get a visa to come and visit.
Right.
And it may not sound like a huge thing, but it is a huge thing in people's lives.
Right.
And if you're there looking at this and you've been working on this and trying to help someone and you feel like, what else can you do? And you just have to say, there's more to do. You can do more. Keep going. And, so I wrote a long email to the two ministers involved again and tried to follow up, and we'll do more. But it's that kind of looking and saying, nope, there's always more we can do. We can always push a little bit harder. And maybe at some point you say you keep pushing and then you veer in a different direction.
Well, for a lot of people, I think sometimes looking up to you, Leah, right? And that's the truth. Like people do look up to your leader, and there's this thought of like, yeah, she's got it figured out, and yeah, you must have had to figure it out along the way so many times. But you even yourself said right now that there are moments, there are challenges, and there's so many of them. And I was thinking, the hard part for you is because you spend your entire day working on everyone else's problem for everyone else's sake. It's rare that I feel like you might have any more time for yourself to actually look at, hey, what's bothering me, and what about me? And that's why when I meet with you, I rarely want to talk to you about like what's going on in politics or what was on. I'm like, yeah. So how's your running going? Are you running? Are you still running? Are you doing that?
Yeah.
Because you don't often, in your role especially,
Yeah.
have the space or the freedom sometimes. There's just so much to do, and you're so committed to what you're doing that, the word sacrifice, it's not even thought of as sacrifice anymore. It's thought of as duty,
Yeah.
right? But I do want to, for my sake, selfishly, I want to get to know Leah a little bit better today. And I think for all of us, there are the things that you stand for and the things that you work for, and we'll talk about that. But before all of that, because I think I want to really understand, and really when I was thinking about it, for someone, a woman, to come as far as you have and to have gone through everything that you have, and for me as a guy who doesn't appreciate it, who doesn't understand it, I want to get a better understanding of it. Not just for me, but I think for a lot of people, a lot of women who probably are looking at you going, yeah, but I'm not Leah, and they don't understand. They think that maybe, you had like these opportunities and, you were in the right place at the right time, and they are not. But before we even get to that, I just want, again, get to know Leah, where you're coming from.
Yeah.
And I find that sometimes there are moments way, way long ago, we talked about that, that there was this thought in your experience or in your mind that you were like, yeah, hold on a second, I want to do something about this.
Yeah.
And it might not have even been for everyone else.
Right.
It might have been something that you were looking at, and then you were like, could have been high school, could have been university. Recall, you said there are so many. Pick one.
Yeah.
Earlier on, where you were like, wait, this doesn't sit right with me, but I don't know what to do. What was that scenario? Do you remember one?
Wow.
It comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, like, again,
Really?
the question is always which one, because there's so many.
Yeah.
But, and I think, like you said, there's threads. Things happen in your life, and then they resurface, and they
Right.
come again. So one thing that comes to mind is when we adopted our second daughter.
Okay.
And it may sound like something unrelated, but it was one of those situations where I got married a little bit later in life. I'd always, and one of the things that happened when we decided to adopt was my mother found a old scribbler of mine, old notebook, when we used to, write in notebooks back in those days in the schoolhouses.
days.
Remember
Right,
those
yeah, I remember
days?
those
Yeah,
days.
exactly.
Where a notebook was actually with paper?
Exactly,
Right.
and they were kept, right? So it had the physical little yellow notebook, and there was a story in there about how I was going to have a large family, but all my children were going to be adopted.
Seriously?
Yeah, and this was from
when
like
did you
grade
write
3
this?
maybe or something. I don't know, like way back.
Wow.
And I didn't get married until later in my life, and when I did,
Do you remember writing that story?
when I read it, it kind of came back to me.
Really?
That feeling about it and why.
Yeah.
It was so interesting. It was like, wow, yeah, that
Why
has been
would
in me.
a grade 3 say something like that?
I think maybe because I was raised in a family where my parents were all about taking care of other people.
Okay.
And there was always other people in our home, people that were that needed to come for a dinner, or you didn't have a place to go for Thanksgiving, or
Okay.
whatever it was. So there was always people around, and we didn't really. Well, my father's family, his mother had kind of adopted one of my uncles, and there were a few other people who
Right.
were kind of like, you didn't quite know how they fit in the family. They were there, but they weren't born into the family.
Sure.
And so I think I always had that sense that we kind of make our families, and I don't think it was at all environmental or altruistic at that time, you know, even
Right.
though some people look at it and
Right.
say, I think it was just that was a feeling that was how I was going to make my family. Maybe I was even afraid of childbirth at that time. I don't know.
Interesting.
But, you know, maybe I looked at it and said, hey. But so when I got married later in life, and my husband had 3 wonderful young boys. They were quite young. And so I had an instant family. I had these
Right.
3 great kids.
Right.
And I hadn't, I guess in a way, they weren't adopted, but they became part of my family.
Right.
Or our family. And then we had another son together.
Okay.
And at that point I figured, well, he does boys. My husband has boys. And I thought, you know what? I'd always, I guess I had that feeling like, why don't we adopt? Why would we help someone, another child? And plus I wanted to grow our family, and I did want a daughter.
Right.
And I thought that would be a nice balance, you know? So, but my husband wasn't keen on it right away. He was kind of like, not sure about the adoption. Let's try and have another, you know, child or
Right.
whatever. So we went
Right.
through in vitro,
Right.
which is a whole story in itself that I
Sure.
won't go into. But a lot of women
Sure.
have these challenges.
Yeah.
And eventually I said, you know, I really think we should adopt. And so our first daughter we adopted when she was younger, and it wasn't smooth. There was a whole story there too, but it was really our second daughter. So it was, I think, 5 or 6 years later.
Okay.
And I'd been working, and I woke up one day and I just said, it was like that thing where you said you get so busy and then you forget. And I kind of went, oh my God, I forgot I wanted a sister for Nadia. You know, I forgot we were going to adopt another girl. Like I thought,
wow.
it came back to me. I kind of started thinking, you know what, this would be a really good thing. And my kids all wanted us to adopt an infant. And I said, I'm not going to do that. It's you know, like, first of all, the other thing about it was I had done a lot of work since adopting our first daughter, looking into children in homes. And,
Right.
and first daughter, Nadia, was adopted in the Moscow region.
Right.
And actually the number of children in children's homes in Russia had increased significantly.
Okay.
And the older children were really not being adopted. And so I said, so my husband and I decided to start down the adventure of adopting an older child, an older daughter.
So you went and did it because, like, that played into your decision.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Like I just said, you know, and again, in Russia, there was the need for this, and there was a program, and I thought, let's explore this. Let's go down this road. And I remember
Why Russia? Like, is there?
Well, that's another whole story. But
Okay.
My mother is Dutch. She was an immigrant to Canada.
Okay.
Her family was kind of Prussian background, and
Got it.
after doing a family tree thing with her, I found there was a name, Nikolai,
Okay.
which is very Russian sounding.
Yes.
At the time, I thought there was actually Russian background, but also there was the number of children. So it was kind of one of these things where you're
Yeah.
looking, where do you adopt from?
Right.
There were a lot of kids that needed homes in Russia at the
Yeah.
time, and
So-
I thought
so
we
you're-
had some connection.
So your family is like your second generation immigrant. Like you're-
Yeah, oh yeah,
it's-
my mother came over here in 1947 on a boat that landed, actually one of the only boats at the time that went to the port of Montreal. Most of them went to Halifax, but that's,
Okay.
yeah, really,
Yeah.
really, her story is fascinating too. But so I thought, you know, Russia, and we'd already adopted Nadia from Russia. And I thought, well, this is meant to be. So we went through all of the procedures that you go through. You do everything, and
Yes.
everything was lining up. And we were set to go to a meeting that you had to do before the children actually arrived for the summer camp program. And we got a call, and there had been some kind of a international incident between Russia and the United States. And they decided to become more strict on allowing Russian children to come to the United States. And the cutoff they decided on was that any child under 7.
Of course.
And my daughter, Christina, was at that time 6.5. She was also very, very tiny and had suffered from a number of different things growing up, and I think she weighed about 34 pounds. But I'd been sent a picture of her already
Right.
in advance of this meeting. And when I saw the photo, and I could still see the photo in my eye, in my mind's eye, I knew right away that this was my daughter. Like, this was
Wow.
our daughter. This was meant to be.
Wow.
And so when I got the call that they weren't going to allow Christina to come because she didn't meet the age requirement, I was devastated. You know, I thought, why would that happen? And what does that mean? And where do I go? And it was really tough. And I remember crying and thinking about it and just going, well, you know what? all you can do is keep trying. And I was on the phone every week, every Friday, in fact. It was a Friday call. I would call, and I'd talk to them, and I'd insist and say, there's no reason why this arbitrary cutoff makes sense. And I knew that in Christina's case, she was a child that was more difficult to place in some ways. And so I just kept fighting. I fought for her, and finally they agreed to let her come to the summer camp program, which was the first step.
Were you in politics at that time? Or what
No,
were you doing?
no, I wasn't in politics. No, I was just, I was working. I was working.
It was just a working.
I was working. We had a lot of kids that we were raising, and I just knew. But you get a sense sometimes. You see something and a picture like that, and it's that want, right? It goes to the want, and you look at it, and you go. But it's deeper than just a want. It's kind of a knowing. Sometimes that it's the right thing to be doing. I don't know. Sometimes I get that sense.
When you're in that situation, though, that. First of all, like you said, you're devastated, right? So there's this, there's an emotional toll.
For sure.
And when we're in that state, you also want to be a problem solver, but it's hard to be a problem solver when we're in that sort of state of mind.
Yeah.
Right. So first of all, there's that.
Yeah.
Then there is, you're still trying to balance the rest of life going on. And then the third thing is, where do you start?
I know.
Like, who do you call? Because your first answers are all no.
Yeah.
And usually the way that's presented to you is like, okay, well, go ahead, change the law, and then call us back, because it's a dead end usually.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, I think for...
So what makes you think that at a dead end, you have a chance?
I think maybe just the belief that you think it's meant to happen. Like you think that it's not inevitable. Like I said, when I saw her picture at that moment, and it didn't always, like, those things don't always happen to me where I'm that sure.
Right.
But I saw the picture and I kind of went, yeah, she's part of our family. She's going to be part of our family. And I knew that. And so I just had this sense that you just, as they say, it's, success is mostly about showing up, right? You just keep doing, you keep at it, and you don't, sometimes you just don't take no for an answer. And at different
Was there a time that you were thinking, they're not giving in, or was and maybe I need to start letting go? Like, was there messages either from yourself or maybe from others around you saying, look, maybe you need to prepare yourself that this is not going to work out, Leah?
Well, I think the reality was that if she had not been allowed to come on the program, there probably would have been another child that I could have been matched with. But at that point, I kind of was determined.
You're committed.
I'm committed. I'm going to work on this. And I guess the default, although I didn't think of it at that time, would be there'd be another child in the program that I would meet and that we'd get to know and get to bring home. But
you weren't thinking Plan B.
No, I wasn't thinking Plan B. I was just thinking Plan A.
Were you getting that message? Were others? Was there another message coming to you from outside of yourself saying, Leah, like, maybe it's time?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
No, not at that time. Not at that time. And I think that's part of it, is that when you just kind of know and you keep going. But
or maybe you weren't hearing it.
Maybe I was ignoring it. I've been told I don't listen sometimes.
I get the same thing. So I was like, maybe there were people going, Leah,
it's not going to work out.
We tried to tell her, but she wouldn't listen.
Exactly.
You get that, huh?
Yeah. I mean, I remember coming back for the meeting. We had been out of the country, coming back for the meeting to talk about this, and they had already given us the information, and I was at two of my other children. It was their end of year picnic or something, and getting the news there and like being, crying, just being devastated by this. And we had just come home, but I still went. I still kept going. I still kept doing it like it was going to happen. Yeah. I didn't stop. And
I could tell you the people you were talking to on the other side were surely telling you this ain't happening.
Right.
And so there's that. So there's definitely a message coming back to you going, you're like, this is not going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're not buying it.
Yeah.
And did it did they do it right away going, I think, Leah, I see your point.
No. I mean, they didn't think they could make it happen either.
Right.
But, part of it
so
may
then
have
what
been...
finally started giving? When did you start noticing the thing was starting to turn?
It was just before they were supposed to be coming. The children were supposed to be coming over.
Okay.
And finally, I mean, I think just talking to them, and they're talking to the children's home this was in Khabarovsk, which is the far east of Russia. Okay. About Christina, and trying to convince them that this was the right thing. So I think they got the children's home or orphanage on side to advocate for Christina's future and to give her a chance. Because I think there was a bit of a subtext to it, a bit of a problem where the Russian government didn't want children who weren't perfect, let's say, to come. Like, that they didn't want problems. And so I think there was this feeling that because Christina had been a failure to thrive child, that there was something there. And I kept saying, but that's because she hasn't had the love and support in the home, right?
Right.
I mean, like give her a
Right.
chance. And I think there was just enough people that got on board. And I think another part of why I was so sure about it was because our experience with our first daughter was not so different, where I'd been told no.
Right.
And I just ignored it and persisted, and we adopted her. So there was this feeling like you can make it happen, like if you just keep at it.
Yeah, I've been
it was a
here
totally
before.
different thing that had come up, but it was a similar thing where, and I thought, you just keep trying until I guess I kept trying and thinking until the moment that those children came on the plane from Russia and landed, that there was hope right until the last moment. And so just keep going. And I think it was about a week before they were going to travel over, I was told she was going to come.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was amazing. And I still remember meeting her at that house, because it was a home where all the kids came to. And sorry.
No, it's fine.
No, she was this tiny little thing. She didn't speak any. And in fact, on the trip over, they had to spend a night in London, and I think she had been left behind in an elevator. Wow. She'd never been in an elevator before. She'd never been in a plane before. I don't even think she'd been in a car before, quite
Wow.
frankly. And she'd been left behind. And for the first few years of her life, she would never go in an elevator. I used to have to walk up so many stairs with her.
Wow.
Yeah, just keep walking. But so she made it over with the group, and we met her, and we had our dog with us, and that was the first thing she bonded with, because she couldn't speak the language.
Right.
She didn't know any of us.
Right.
But animals have that energy, right?
Yeah.
And she just went to the dog,
Right.
and she was
Right.
so, enthralled. And she spent the summer, but then all the children had to go back, because it was a program where children came over to stay with families, but some might decide not to adopt the children.
Right. Okay.
And I always knew I would. It was not a question
Sure.
in my mind, but it was the way the program worked.
Right.
So she had to get back on a plane and go, and it was, again, I would
Oh my
say,
gosh.
even harder than not knowing, because then you knew, and you had to let your child return.
Right.
To a place where, I know the people in the homes did the best they could, like they all had the best intentions, but, there were 100 children or more, and when we finally did go there, she slept in a room where there was just so many beds lined up, and she was in the back corner, by herself, and
Right.
it was a very different kind of existence, and I think she was very lonely a lot of the times, and didn't get the kind of nurturing and love that she needed. So I'm letting her go back, and then I did the same thing. They said it's going to take a year to get through the adoption process. You have to come over twice. You have to do this and that, and it's going to take forever. And she went back the end of August, and she was adopted on her birthday, which was December 25th, Christmas Day.
Oh, okay.
I was in Khabarovsk in Russia, in the Far East,
Wow.
with two of my kids, and we spent a month there, and I brought her home by the New Year. Yeah. So it was an amazing adventure, and it was just a story, though, of everything. It's not just you, right? It's not just the story, like the story of me. I didn't make it all happen like other
Right.
people did, right?
Right.
It was the universe, I think,
Right.
supporting something, and I think there was a reason, and that had happened, and it just was continuing to push, to believe,
Yeah.
to push.
Well, at one point in time, do you start looking at it and you're like, this is hard?
Yeah.
I mean, look, when you talk about your family and seeing extensions to your family around you, it just seems like to be working. I always call it like the difference between the dining room and the kitchen in a restaurant. Like you see the dining room, you don't see the kitchen.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
But when you're a child and you're looking at all these people around, you're like, oh, this is nice. I like it. This is, right? There's this feeling. Because we had the same thing in our house.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. I want more people.
Yeah.
And then when it's your turn to, like, it's your home and you're doing all of this, it's hard. So you get this feeling that this is sometimes not fun.
Yeah. No, it's
Yeah,
not.
like-
But it's not, and there's always challenges. I think.
Everybody wants to have comfort and fun and good.
Of course.
But then you're dealing with these moments and they suck and it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
But
There are definitely moments.
But you went towards it still. Is what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Not once.
Yeah,
right? Multiple times.
yeah. No, it's true.
Why would you do that over again and over and over again?
I don't. I don't know. And I think some of the decisions I've made in my life, people look at me and I just say temporary insanity. Like, what can I say?
No, I don't buy that.
No, it's not. It's not.
No.
It's a
What
feeling.
did you see? Like, why would you put yourself through this?
I don't No, but I don't think I'm unique. I think this is the
No,
thing.
I'm
I
not
think
worried
that,
about whether you're unique or not, but why did you do it?
Everybody has a sense of kind of what they want and like what's possible and what's
Right.
worth putting effort into. And I think,
Okay.
having been in Russia once before to adopt Nadia,
Right.
and seeing her baby home in Moscow, and knowing and seeing the numbers rise from 250,000 children when we adopted Nadia in 2000 to when we adopted Christina in 2007, there were 750,000 children
Wow, yeah.
in homes in Russia.
Right.
And things hadn't gotten better. So knowing what condition these children were living in, and I remember the first time when we adopted Nadia, the thing the judge said to us is, "Why don't you take more children?" And I said, I want to, but I'd done a lot of research and reading, of course, and saw that the best way for children to become part of your family is to adopt one child at a time.
Right.
And there's also the other, you have to look at
So
your reality.
So you were like you set yourself some practical limits too as well.
Well,
like,
and considering the other
good.
kids in the family
Right.
and my husband, who may not have had quite the same appetite for as many children,
Right.
in the end, but.
Right.
But he was always very
These
supportive.
are significant factors.
They're all factors, right? You have to deal with. Then you say, well, what can I do? What's possible, right? And,
what is the maximum that's possible,
right,
to be able to
and,
do?
yeah.
You didn't ask what's the minimum, right? That we can do.
I think I could have done more, but again,
Right.
it is you reach those points in your life, and you kind of look at it and go, okay. And with Christina as well, she had more needs. She was failure to thrive, and I thought, and she was 7, which is a very different thing than adopting a 1-year-old.
Sure.
So that takes more time and focus, and when you have other children as well,
Right.
you kind of go, okay, there's a balance there. What's the responsible thing to do for your family? And we all have different limits, right, on what we'll do.
So all of this happens. You go through this, and again, some people think about doing it. They don't.
Yeah.
Some people do it once, and then that was hard enough. You
Right.
do this multiple times and still say you could have done more. Okay,
Yeah.
fine. So you go through these. It's starting to make sense now. Why, if you could do that, the guy's on the hill. But still, at some point in time, right? At that point in time, you were not yet into politics. At what point in time did you sort of say, what drove you towards that? From what were you doing before this?
Well, I at that time, I had been in business. I'd worked
okay.
in consulting, and then I was my husband and I had a company, so we were entrepreneurs.
Okay.
And had done a lot of work on that, and we eventually sold our company.
Okay.
And we decided at that time that we had enough, and let's put our focus on our family. So we spent time with the kids and really doing a lot of other things. I started a foundation to help women with microcredit projects around the world. So I worked on, and I traveled a lot with that and helped, but always from the perspective of working with organizations on the ground, because I knew I had my base where I was, and I had my family,
Sure.
and so I wanted. Mostly, I raised money for them, and
Okay.
I worked in partnership and went and met with the women in these areas, and it was really interesting. I did it for over 10 years, and while we were building our family.
Which years were these? From where to where?
Oh gosh, that was probably from 2003 to 2000 and let me see, even earlier than that. That's a good question. The first decade of the 2000s, somewhere around there.
So up to about 2010ish.
Yeah. So I'd adopted Nadia. In fact, it was probably 1998. So I'd worked on that, and I knew when Christina, the youngest, the last child, turned 18. I thought, you know what? I have a lot more energy. I have a lot more to do. It also coincided with a couple of things. One was Donald Trump being elected in the United States. And I was very worried about, and an overall trend in our world. And I looked at it and I thought, my background and my family is also politics. My father ran, but my family was always about community service and helping people.
Sure.
So he ran for office, and he was mayor in our town for a while. But it came from community and from helping, not necessarily from politics. Although he was involved with the Liberal Party and did policy work when the Trudeau Senior was Prime Minister, as well. So that had been there, and I had an interest, and over the years been involved in different campaigns, but not personally. But I decided after Donald Trump won, and that I should, if I can do something. You got a serious
look on your face all of a sudden.
I did. I went.
I need to do something about
this. This can happen in Canada. Like, we can't take our democracy. We can't take our our principles, our values as Canadians for granted. Like things can change dramatically, and if there's a way I can make a difference, I want to. So I just decided, well, let me start thinking about it. And like I say, Christina was 18. We were in Canada. She was going to a special school, and I decided, so I started just to think about it, and one thing led to the next. And
what was the one thing? What was the first thing? Like,
it's a good question.
How do you go from like...
My brother was mayor.
Okay.
I was back here. There was a number of things that had happened.
You started talking to people?
Other challenges where my time had been put into caring for children. And my father was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. I was helping him on his journey. Right. So a number of things had happened. And then there came a point where we were sitting down, and it was, I guess, nominations for the election were coming up, and I made a joke.
Like what?
This would have been 2019.
Okay.
So this was
for like councillor or for
2018.
What?
No, federal election.
Oh, federal election.
2018. Okay. My daughter had just turned 18.
Let's just go for it.
Well,
okay.
And I was sitting there, and my brother was mayor. Still is mayor in Newmarket, but we were sitting around the family table, and somebody mentioned, something about running, and I said, I can't run in Newmarket. They have a good candidate right now anyway, and my brother's mayor, which would make it a little awkward because being a mayor is a nonpartisan role. And I thought, no, I'm not going to do that. And then somebody at the table, I don't remember who it was now, said, they're looking for a candidate in the next riding in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill, which was my neighbor. Like I felt that was my neighborhood, York region. I'd grown up driving back and forth to U of T and spent a lot of time there. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. And they said, they're looking for somebody. They really need a good candidate. And I thought, well, I'll talk to them. If they think I'm a good candidate, then maybe I'll do it. I didn't think there was a candidate there, actually. There was somebody who wanted to run, but I guess they didn't, they were still looking for other candidates. They wanted a nomination with contestant, people to run, et cetera.
They want to be thorough. They want to have a process.
And also the Liberal Party has a measure, which I think is a very good one, of trying to encourage women to run. Because women often won't come forward without someone nudging them. So all of our associations are asked to encourage or at least to look at a woman. Doesn't mean they're going to be the candidate at all. It just means that they go out and say, why don't you run for the position? And then they go through the nomination.
Right.
So I met with them, and I got a lot of support, and I put my name in the hat, and I ran for the nomination 3 months before the election. 3 months before the election. So
you've never been in politics before this?
No.
Well, I mean, you've been around people in community service.
Yep.
So you know what an election is. Obviously, you're going through the experience. But then it's at the end of the day, it's a whole different world.
It is, as I found out. Being the candidate is very different.
So you didn't know this going in? That's good.
Not everything entirely.
In a way, that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like parenthood. You don't know before you have a kid what it's going to be like, right? And you don't know what the child's going to be like. You don't know. So many things in our life. We do thinking we know.
Right.
Sort of, kind of.
Right.
And then we've realized, it's a lot different than you thought.
Right.
Yeah.
So like you spoke to people in the party, or like exactly like when you say you met with them.
Yeah. The association, the Liberal Association in the riding meets with anybody who's a potential candidate who would like to be a candidate.
Okay.
They usually interview you. You have to put in an application to the party.
It's a process.
Oh, it's a process.
And a lot of sometimes just looking at the process forms the bill, and it's a little daunting.
Oh, it is. Totally. Yeah, all the things you have to fill out.
Like you had never done this before.
No. I mean, just the application for the to be greenlit by the party, for the party to approve you as a potential candidate first. Right. Then you have to go into the community. You have to get, I can't even remember how many signatures it was.
Right.
So many signatures. And, and then you've got to think about how do you organize your campaign? How do you get people out? And there's really, at that point...
And you'd never done this before.
No, and you're not part of the party.
Right.
At this point, you're on your own. You're trying to become the candidate for the party. So there's no support. There's no support. There's nobody telling you this is how it's done. This is, what to do. So you just start looking. You just start reaching out to people, connecting, kind of like my story, you just keep going. Every day you try and talk to one more person. Hopefully they have. Now, again, I was lucky in that my family was in the area and had been involved. And without my family...
Right.
I don't think it would have been possible.
Well, I mean, I hear that a lot in every case, that there's a support that you can go back to and you can lean on.
Absolutely.
But on some level, you're still alone because you are there for the first time. You don't know what the next step looks like.
No.
You don't know if you're doing it right.
No.
You weren't given a book or a guide, and maybe there even isn't one, right? Like there might be one, but you certainly hadn't looked at it at
Well, you
this
find
point.
out after there is. I mean, that's always the case, right? You find out the more you get into it, you say, oh, that was there, and now I know if somebody comes to me me and says they want to run, I can tell them a lot of things to look at and do.
Right.
But in the moment, and plus it was so soon before the election.
Right.
Our nomination was in August of 2019, and the election was in, I think it was September that year, or October the 1st. Because the first time I ran, I lost.
Oh,
right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I lost.
So,
I ran, I won the nomination.
Okay.
Which was huge for me. I thought, wow, that's amazing.
That's a win, yeah.
It's huge. But then we only had 2 months to get ready for the election. And that's a very short time, as I now know, very short time, especially when you're new.
Right.
Where I wasn't well known in this riding.
Right.
My name wasn't known, and name recognition is a big thing, just having, people you've connected to. And of course I'd done that through the nomination and through other things.
Right.
But it was still a real feat to try and organize and get the campaign going and get out there and knock on doors. And I was running against a woman who had been a Liberal and crossed the floor to the Conservatives.
So that's quite the opponent, right?
And she, quite frankly, if people don't know you and when you're not, and most people aren't super interested in these things, quite frankly.
Right.
So we're both tall, blonde, Northern European backgrounds.
Okay.
Her name was Leona. My name was Leah.
Okay.
So a lot of similarities, a lot of confusion, a lot of things that happened.
Sure.
And she had been the member for
She's in
5 years. I want to know, was it 3 or 4 years already? 3
Right.
years. So she had name recognition. She had been there as a Liberal and then as a Conservative. And so it was really interesting. It was an amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
It was exhausting. It was challenging. It was frustrating at times. And sometimes I would sit there and go, what am I doing? Like,
Yeah,
I
'cause
can't believe I'm doing this.
Yeah, when they finally add it all up and you find out it's not like, because leading up to that moment, like you could win.
Right.
There's this sense of like, yeah, right, and you're already thinking about the next steps now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to plan, right?
Right.
And then it doesn't happen,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't sit there and say to yourself, wow, at least I did it and I got this far.
No, I didn't. I mean, and I think losing an election is hard, but as I say, and I still say this, and I'm going to be running again, and people say, oh, look at the polls today. Are you crazy? What are you doing? And I'm like, it doesn't matter. Our democracy requires that people run regardless of the polls. We need people to run who believe in certain things and put out what they believe in, what they stand for, regardless because that's democracy. If everybody who thought they were going to lose didn't run, we would have a dictatorship. I mean, that's not how it works in our democracy. And if you believe in what you're doing, if you believe in the principles, then it doesn't. You still run. You always run with the goal of getting the seat, of being there. But just the process, just running, just being the candidate, is an important part of democracy. And you talk to so many people, and you explain why you are there, what your hope is for the riding, for the people, for the country.
Right.
And you give people a choice.
Right.
And they'll choose what they want to choose.
Right.
But it's important. So it wasn't at that point likely I was going to win because I was new, I wasn't known. It was not a huge swing election.
Right.
Like 2015 was.
Right.
But it didn't matter. I said, well, I go. And when I lost, I probably took a week or so of re-examining it, and then I phoned some people in Ottawa and said, can I come and talk to you? And I want to see what I can do. I want to see, and I kept running. I didn't stop.
So in that week where you're reconciling, because I think that's where, this is not maybe the right way to say it, but I know you, and you know what I mean when I say this, but you were defeated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here's the winner, and they are going to move on, and you're not going to do that. You're not this person. You're not in this role. But you're not defeated, actually, right? This was this one step. Yeah. But really, the world's telling you, okay, that part's done.
Yeah, we chose her.
And
we
now
didn't like you. We chose her.
Yeah,
exactly.
You're not
all
good
the
enough.
Best. Yeah, exactly.
Thanks for showing up.
Yeah,
Democracy had its thing.
Sayonara. Yeah.
Right?
Off you go. Yeah.
I mean, that's what everyone does.
Yeah,
and then they leave you, and you're like. Yeah. You're like forgotten, literally, in some ways, isn't
Absolutely.
it? Is that how it feels, right?
To a certain extent, and I think people find that as candidates. But I don't. And again, it's kind of like you can go through that, and you can say, okay, it was a failure. I wasn't elected, or whatever. Or you can say, it wasn't the right time.
Okay.
The cause. I have this saying: the cause is in the future, which is things happen, you don't know why. But you find out later why they happen. And I actually believe after that
why did that
2 years that I spent
yes.
Between 2019 and 2021, if I hadn't spent that time I don't think I would have been as effective as a member of parliament when I was elected, because that gave me time to really get to know the riding better, to get to know the organizations better, the players, the people who are making a difference on the ground. And I went to so many different things that I didn't have time to do in that 3-month period. Community events, meeting key players, like I say, and just really understanding. And so when I did run again and was eventually elected, I had this much better not only understanding but network ability to get things done, because I knew who to reach out to. I'd already connected with people, and so I really felt like it allowed me to do a better job when I was elected.
I couldn't agree with you more. It's often when we don't get what we strive for, like on the first shot, when we go through that reevaluation, then there's this discovery, and that discovery is what really sets us up. Just
Absolutely.
the way that you're saying it.
Yeah.
So it makes you wonder, had you won,
Right.
would you have
Right.
been? You really believe that?
Yeah. I think
and
it would have
it
been
was-
really hard, because even when I did win in 2021, there was still a lot to learn,
Yeah.
because you don't have the whole knowledge of how the government works,
Right.
of how the House works,
Right.
of all of the little things there. So at least I kind of had that part of understanding my constituency better.
And you didn't have to worry about the limelight at that time.
Yeah.
You're able to do the learning
Exactly.
and the developing. Those are wins.
Yeah, and I think it's so important. I say to people, and you said people look up to you, and I think, well, I understand that, but on the other hand, you think it is a real honor to be elected and to serve.
Yes.
And to be in the House, and I don't take that for granted. And then there's a part of it which says, I'm just like everyone else. Like, it's not, I'm just somebody who decided this is something I wanted to do and could do.
Right.
And that was my way. It was kind of the way I saw and thought, this is the way I can maybe make a difference.
Right.
Everybody does it in a different way.
Yes.
So I don't see myself as elevated anyway. I see and those 2 years actually helped me, because I wasn't the member then.
Right.
I was just a resident, a constituent like anybody else.
Well, if someone was to see you today, it's like, well, Leah always gets what Leah wants. Leah's she doesn't know what it's like to not get, to lose, to I didn't know. I mean, honestly, if I didn't think about it.
Yeah.
Because again, those stories and those moments, it's kind of like, they're part of the history, but they're somewhere over there.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's in that moment, I think, like you just said, you did some of your greatest, development, your greatest strides were taken in that moment. And it allowed you to kind of have that pace and the momentum coming in the second time.
Yeah, and be able to serve better. Like, I think I was a better MP because of it.
Yeah.
So, and I think for me, representation, making sure that you're really, like, as a member of Parliament, and people sometimes say, oh, you're backbencher. And I said, well, to me, it's the most important role, because you're representing Canadians. And not only is that important because of the representation, but it's important because of what that means to how people feel about the government, and whether people think it's relevant or want to be involved, or
Right.
or see that democracy is something important. And so if we don't have people who want to just be people representing people, and we have people all who want to, be cabinet ministers or do this or that or fly off here and there. It's like, yes, there's that role to our job too. And I'm not saying we have amazing cabinet ministers. I appreciate so much the work they
Sure.
do, and it's fantastic. But I think the first role of a member of Parliament, and the most important role, is representing your constituents. And so I'm really pleased to be doing it. I'm honored, and I think we'll see what the future holds. Maybe there's more in store for me. Maybe there's not. I'll run again.
Yeah.
I love what I'm doing. I love helping people, and I just kind of figure, well, I'll give people the choice again.
Well, I think
they know me.
That seems to be like just the common denominator with you. And something else that I also realize now is that, when you don't win the first time, it's not just like there might be people in the party going, maybe you weren't the right candidate, right? Like, forget about, okay, maybe like you said, there was more that you can problem solve.
Yep.
For your scenario as you being the candidate.
Right.
But there are others problem solving without your name in the mix.
Absolutely. They look at those
so
things
you gotta,
all the time.
So you also have that to deal with.
Yeah.
You couldn't just say, hey, if I had more time, I could do this, or
Right.
I'm better now.
Yeah, yeah.
It doesn't matter.
No.
You know?
And you had to get renominated again. And even this time as a sitting MP, I had to be renominated again
Okay.
as the candidate. So they're always looking at you and assessing. And I think there what it goes back to is, you can lose because you don't do the work,
Right.
or you can lose because of other things.
I was just going to ask you about those challenges, right?
Yeah.
So, like, obviously, somebody who goes into public service knows that you're going to have to do the work.
Right.
Or are there people who actually think that this is some kind of a, like, no way. You couldn't
I
have
don't
thought
know.
that.
I think there are. I mean, I look at the House of Commons when I'm there, and there's 338
Yeah.
members.
But you
right
knew
now.
there's work to do. Like,
Oh, I knew there was
know,
work to do.
it's-
But, and I do believe that most of the people in the House of Commons
Right.
are there for the right reason.
Yes.
I do.
Yeah.
But there are some seats that are very, very safe seats.
Right.
As a member, you really don't have to do much to be elected.
Okay.
People don't demand anything of you. And maybe they do, but
Sure.
and it's up to the individual to decide how much they do or not do.
Someone said that to me once as well, like that role is what you make of it.
It is.
You know?
It is. And especially if you have a safe seat.
Right.
Because you're going to get
exactly.
elected just if you breathe.
Right.
Basically, if you breathe
Right.
and you have the party colors on, you're elected.
Yeah.
And we see that out west a lot.
Yeah.
We see that in some some other ridings. There are certain ridings. Mine's not. The GTA
Right.
is not like that.
No, huh?
I'm in a swing riding. People make up their mind on each election based on different things. So you're always you never know.
So can I ask you
Mm-hmm.
now? There's things that you want to achieve, like
Mm-hmm.
that you set out to, that motivated you to get in. Then that's you. But then there's your writing and what your writing wants,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and what the people in your
Yeah.
writing think is important.
Yeah.
I can't imagine that they're always like,
No.
right? There's
No.
some reconciliation to take place there. So, how do you?
Yeah.
How
Well,
do you balance
and
that?
the interesting thing is not. I believe like I say, the most important role is to represent the riding. But
Right.
the reality is that the riding is not always homogenous. I mean, they're not in agreement
Right.
about what they think you should do. As you can
Right.
see,
So if you
because
do this, you're
so
gonna
many
get-
people vote conservative, liberal, NDP. So there's different opinions, and even within liberals on certain issues.
Right.
So you have. I mean, I think the most important thing is the conversations. To be talking to people constantly.
Okay.
If you to be listening, not just having a conversation, but to listening to people.
Right.
Taking what you hear from people in your riding,
Right.
and then integrating it with what you know is happening in the government, what can be done, what kind of effect things will have, where we're at as a country, because there's a lot of times where people might want something but don't always understand, and it's not because of ignorance, it's just because they don't see the other half
Right.
that I see in government.
Sure.
So you have to kind of weigh that, and you also then have to be true to yourself.
Right.
And when I ran, and I think I'm pretty clear on my values.
Mm-hmm.
And so people, to a certain extent, have to trust you, trust your lived experience, trust your background, your education, whatever it is, your family, whatever,
Right.
whatever it is they value. They have to
Right.
trust what they know about you, that you're going to do the best job you can to help them and to help the country.
Well, but like from the little that I see, at the end of the day, people want what they want. Okay.
Yep.
So, and they're not in your shoes. They
Right.
don't have to worry about navigating. Is this fair? Is this good for Canada? They just want what they want.
Yep.
So generally,
Yep.
many are just in survival modes,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And before they have to worry about their neighbor and let alone the entire country.
Yep.
So they're already on a different page than you. So they come to you and they say, "Hey,
Yeah.
now go represent me."
Yeah.
But this doesn't necessarily align with maybe what you want to go out there and do. So how do you work through that before you get to government
Yeah.
in your own head?
Yeah.
Like you might not stand for this.
Right.
But your writing is telling you, the people in your writing and you have a way of being able to get a pulse, right? To go, okay,
course.
this is important to my writing.
Right.
Because keeping the writing satisfied means also, you're staying in that position so that you can continue to serve.
And
How does that?
That is such a hard balance because
What do you do there?
I can't be a representative who. I know it's important to be reelected. Don't get me wrong. It's important for
Right.
many reasons. And for me right now, given who the opposition is, I think it's very important.
You need the support even to do what you're doing then in this term.
But I can't make decisions based on whether people are going to vote for me or not. I can't do that. Because that's like being in business or short term the stock market. We're worried about the next quarter's results. If our representatives make decisions based on what they hear in one moment from electorate or from people, and don't do it based on a longer term view, a view that they really think hard about what the repercussions are and what their values are and how they can really deliver for the riding. And maybe it sounds like you're not listening, but I listen. I listen all the time. That's so important.
Right.
You have to listen. But representing somebody doesn't always mean doing what they want you to do or doing what they say.
Well,
And you'd
really?
be schizophrenic anyway. You'd be schizophrenic because if I listened, if to represent someone I had to do what they said,
Right.
I would be taking diametrically opposed views on every issue.
Right.
Because I get emails from one person who says protect the environment. I get an email from another person who says cut the carbon tax. I get an email from one person who says, condemn, stand for Palestine more strongly. I get something from another person who says help us with anti-Semitism.
Right.
Like, how do you
Yes.
represent a diverse group of people?
Yes.
You listen.
Uh-huh.
You listen. You try and do what you think is the best thing to represent the community as a whole. And when I think about it, I think about, the future of our riding, the future of our country. And let's just take, for example, the situation, the war in Gaza right now,
Okay.
right? And you can look at that and say, well, should you be out there calling for a ceasefire? Initially, our government didn't, and I supported that. Eventually, we have done that. But my decision when I talked to people who wanted, who didn't want, who on every side, and I thought, what's our role here? What's our government's role, and what's my role as a representative of this community?
Right.
Number one for me was really, we're in Canada. I'm a Canadian member of Parliament, and I'm a globalist. I care greatly about human rights and about the world.
Right. And your past experience speaks for itself.
And this is often the difficult thing. Two things can be true. And I saw what was happening in our community. I saw what was happening between people, not just between Muslims and Jews, between people who were taking extreme sides.
Yeah.
And not putting themselves in the other person's shoes or trying to see the whole position. And emotions were very strong.
Yeah.
And the ongoing situation is horrendous.
Yes.
And I see why people have such strong reactions. I'm not in their shoes. I can't even say empathize. I can listen and I can try and understand the best, but I'll never be in their position, either on any side. So I have to look at that and say, for me, one thing was, I do not want to do anything to ignite more hatred, to ignite more division, to in any way increase Islamophobia or anti-Semitism in our riding, in our area, or in our country, quite frankly, around the world, if I can.
Right.
But I did not want to do anything that would do that. I also wanted to be sure that any actions we were taking actually could get some results. We have results. I'm very much focused on, people always accuse liberals of being, woke and virtue signaling, all these things, whatever. But I'm not interested in doing that.
I love how you do that. Whatever.
Whatever. Whatever. That's what they say.
That's what they think. So whatever.
Whatever.
Yeah.
But so that's what they think. But it's what you do. And so for me, it's not about saying, we need a ceasefire or right to defend within whatever position, extreme position. It's about what can we actually do that will help people.
Right.
What can we do?
It's
We're
not an
medium
easy
power.
answer either, right?
No.
Because either way you go.
We're a medium-sized power in the world. There are certain realities with the government in Israel right now and with Hamas. And you have to look at those things and look at our position and look at what you're trying to accomplish. And we had numerous Canadians, Palestinian Canadians, Israeli Canadians, other Canadians in the war zone that we needed to get out, that we wanted to help.
Right.
We also had relatives of them, and we had a situation where we had to get the approval of Israel and Egypt for every person, put them on the list and get approval from both countries for every person that we were able to get out of that area. You do not accomplish that by taking extreme positions and calling people names. You do not accomplish that.
Right.
You do not accomplish getting any humanitarian aid into an area. Immediately, our Minister of International Assistance, Ahmed Hussein, we stepped up and we said, we're going to provide aid. How do you get it in there? It was too short. It wasn't enough, but we did manage to get a pause to get humanitarian aid in for a while. We have a much better chance of getting that again than of getting a ceasefire right now. Not between the Netanyahu government and Hamas. So what do you work on? Do you work on virtue signaling and saying, this is what I want? Or do you work on things that you think you could actually make a difference on and actually help people, get aid to those people? And maybe it's not enough, but maybe it saves the lives of some children who need the medicine. But if you can't do everything, can you do something?
Right.
And let's take action. So I'm not about taking extreme stance. I'm not about virtue signaling. I'm about working, and I'm not about doing things because people will say I'll vote for you or not vote for you.
Right.
I'm about trying to figure out as best I can.
Right.
From with seeing what's happening within our government and in our security forces and in the discussions we're having with our international allies, and seeing what's happening here in Canada, and figuring out what's the best way forward that's going to really, decrease hate and help people.
It reminds me of a saying that says the only way to make everybody happy is to not stand for something. And you don't strike me as somebody who doesn't stand for something.
No, I stand for something.
So there are going to be people who are, on any given day,
very unhappy.
And one day they're happy with you, and the next day they're not happy with you. And you say to yourself, look, that just comes with the job. Do you or what do you like?
My skin is not thick enough.
Day in, day out.
I don't
what
have.
Do you do?
I don't have alligator skin.
Honestly, I've talked to Mayor. We've had him here. I've had conversations with councillors, MPs, MPPs, and I've always loved I too love community service.
Yeah.
But I got to tell you, and sometimes they've told me, even when I was working with the Board of Trade, that's way down there.
It's not.
But literally nothing compared to the kind of trials that you go through. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, the stuff that you have to deal with. There are people who have value to add, who have ideas. Hearts are in the right place.
Right.
But are so deterred.
Absolutely.
To step into I'll put my name on that list. Mm-hmm. I'd love to do something, but I'm to deal with what you have to deal with, the distraction, the yapping that goes at you, the stuff on media that's said about you, all that stuff, and then you have a family and you have all of these things. Mm. There's so many people who want to jump in and help, but they're I'm not going to stand in that heat.
I know.
And it's not fair to me. It's not fair to you. Do you ever feel that? It's not fair. I'm trying to serve you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to serve my community, and I'm being shot at.
Yeah, but you know what? It's true. It is. I won't say it's not hard. It is hard. I don't have thick skin, and it is a bit of a problem being in this world, in this life.
It's a recipe. How many coffees in a day do you need? What is it?
I don't drink coffee much, but it's. So it does hurt me, and there are times when we talked about get down, you have to get back up. Where I get down. I mean, I had one particularly bad attack, social media attack from a conservative, and you get threats, you get called names, you people say ugly things, and you're threatened, and you kind of go, okay, I don't know I can do this, and then you say, it's that fight or flight response, right? And you either decide to fold it in or you fight, and I guess I'm just, in the end, somebody who fights because I believe in it. I don't want the bullies to take over the world. I don't want people who care deeply not to be able to serve. And I think we need to continue to fight, and there are people who just don't have it in them, and their circumstances are different. And if my children were younger, if I was in a different position right now, but I've lived a lot of life. I've seen a lot of things. I've had a lot of challenges, and I kind of just say, sometimes you just have to say, it's that person, and they're doing it, if for whatever reason. Sometimes, they're doing the best they can, and they have a reason they're feeling that right now. They have a reason they're doing what they're doing, and so try and understand it. Don't take it personally, although that's hard. It's hard.
Right.
It's hard. And just keep your eye on what you're trying to do, what your focus is, and keep putting one foot in front of the other and get back up.
Keep one foot in front of the other, yeah. I gotta say, do you ever get this message or this feeling, maybe my dear sister, my dear friend, my mom, whatever, someone says, or just Leah saying this to herself, you've done enough. Come on, you don't, it's not on you. This is not your problem. Mm-hmm. You've done it. You've done everything that you could do. Just, it's not worth taking this kind of hit, this heat. You're not what they say you are. They don't appreciate you enough. Stop.
Did you ever read the poem Anyway? Do it anyway. Do it anyway. But not only that.
Yes, I have read the poem.
I'm still breathing, right? And not only am I still breathing, I have a ton of energy. Like I said, I've raised these kids. I've got to a point with my business career and everything else. And you reach a point, and I look ahead, and people are living to 100 plus. I'm only in my early 60s. Do you remember what
Bob Marley said? That whole, when he was shot at, and he's like, "Look, people are trying to make it worse. Don't take a day off." So I'm not taking.
Yeah.
Fine. But really, like, when is it enough? Like,
I guess when I get knocked down and I can't get back up again, you know. And but I think we just have to make that decision. And I don't fault people who make that decision.
Right.
I don't fault people who can't.
Right.
We're human, and we all have
well,
our
like, they
limits
gave it
and
their
we all
all,
have our
right? They know that
circumstances.
that's their all.
And their life is different than mine, right?
Yeah.
They're dealing with other things. So, but as long as I can, I feel like I have that in me, and I feel I have the energy and the desire, and
Definitely
I believe,
have the energy and the desire.
and
I
the
can
belief,
see.
and I care greatly.
Yeah.
That's what I'll do, and then there'll be a point where I can't anymore, and then somebody else will. And hopefully I'll have mentored that person. Hopefully I'll have helped other people.
Is that part of the plan? Like, do you
Absolutely.
do that? Yours?
Absolutely. I'm always looking for people to run. And as a feminist and as someone who's lived through, over my life and my career in business and other things, through times where it's been difficult to be women and women are not represented enough, I have a particular focus on trying to get more women in politics.
So if
at
I'm a
every
guy
level.
and I want to get in there, I can't talk to you
Oh,
about
no,
this.
you can totally
Well,
come.
I'm just asking you because
Totally.
you said you're promoting
No,
women. So what about a guy?
Look, I want any person who's interested, in any young person, I will encourage. And in our office, we've had lots of people, men and women. But for me, if I'm encouraging somebody, if I see somebody who has potential, because often the young girls won't think of it as much as the younger men.
Really?
Still.
Yeah.
But you walk through the halls in Parliament.
Yeah.
It's all men. All men everywhere. We have a couple women, right? We have Kim Campbell.
Right.
And we have Jean Sauvé. Every other painting. And I want a hall of women. I want, we're 52% of our population, or 51, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, we are not a minority.
No.
There's no reason why women shouldn't be represented the same way.
Right.
And yet for decades, for centuries, there were no women and some women.
And the women have proven that they solve, they got things done.
Yeah.
Like you said, like, sometimes you might say, hey, look at how you're solving for it. Like, this is what we can get done.
Yeah.
And you're moving, you're bringing people together. And sometimes, quite frankly, you're better at it.
Well, I think we do, despite the fact I think women and men can have equal capacity to do things, I think we do things differently. And I think the balance, I think having men and women at the table is important. And I think having the diversity of Canada represented is important.
Right.
So it's not only about gender or sex, it's about also other representation, because you have to be there. I can't understand, Laurie Idloud, who's a NDP member, and she is Inuit. I'm not in her shoes. I don't understand. So it's a great thing she's there in the House.
Right.
I look around. One of the things I love about the Liberal caucus is we are the most diverse caucus. We have the highest percentage, of women have a large party. The Greens have 2 people, one's a woman, so they have 50%.
Sure.
But we have the highest.
Yeah.
And we have people from that represent every part of Canada.
Right.
And I love that. And when we have discussions in our caucus, it is like the discussion in my riding or the discussion in Canada, because we have everyone there. So it's fantastic. And we need that to govern this country, this diverse, amazing country. Well, you can't do it with just one type of thought, one type of person. You need to have that conversation.
So I'm not going to ask you what you've achieved, because you're going to be probably way too humble to talk about those things. But like, when you look back on it, right? What are the things that with the support of the people who you've been working with, what are you looking at it going like, that was very fulfilling?
Oh, well.
Is there something that stands out specifically?
One thing that comes immediately to mind for me is our national child care program. We now have a early learning and child care program in Canada that will, when it's fully implemented, allow for $10 a day child care.
Right. Yes.
Every parent, every family will be able to access that. It's rolling out. It's not perfect, but we got the legislation passed.
Right. It's now on its way.
It's on its way, and people are paying 50% less than they did a year ago.
Right.
That's big for families in York Region.
Yeah.
For women who are debating, do I go back to work? I want to stay in my career. Do I go back to work because economically it doesn't make sense? And this is what happened to women a lot of times, is that they make the decision to take time off of their careers or their whatever they're doing for their children, partially because of the economics, partially because they may want to, but it's very hard to get back in at the same place. And so making that transition and getting to the positions of leadership are difficult. And so if men want, because this is about parents, want to stay in the workforce, they can do that now, regardless of economics. And I think that is so important. It's something that when I was first involved in politics, student politics at University of Toronto, in 19, I want to say it was 81 or 2.
Giving it away, Leah.
I know, when I was women's commissioner.
This
It's
is
okay. I'm proud of my age. I'm it's a good thing to be alive, and I have a lot of
Hey,
energy.
what? Yeah,
I have
I'm like
30 more
I
years
love it
to
now.
work.
Yeah, enjoy it.
But when I was women's commissioner there, the first report on the status of women had been published just prior to that, and one of the asks was for a national child care program. You think how many decades that was?
Yes.
And how many governments tried to get there, how many tried to get it across the line. Twice we came very close.
Right.
Our government got it passed, and we have a program in place with bilateral agreements with every province.
That makes a difference in like everyday life, right?
It makes a huge difference, cost of living.
Right.
Like if you can save $800 a month on your childcare for one kid,
Right.
2 children, like that's like another it's not quite another mortgage anymore with interest rates, but it makes a big difference.
Sure.
And if you have 2 children
real
or 3
money.
children, it is.
Yeah.
And for me, that kind of, I think the future of our economy, and I'm somebody who's a business person too, and I think about our economy, but inclusion and making sure that everyone who lives in Canada has the opportunity to contribute, has the opportunity to work, has the opportunity to be part and build our country in whatever way they want. That's how our country is going to grow.
Yeah.
And that's why these programs that address minorities or address underrepresented people are so important. It's not just for justice, which is very important, and fairness. It's also for economic growth and opportunity. And I look at this and I think, wow, it finally got done. I was in the House.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you were part of that.
And I was also, when I was elected in 21, remember I say there's causes in the future? That was the 100th year from the first woman sitting in the House. It was 100 years. I was the 103rd woman in that parliament. And we are, for the first time, we're over 30% representation.
Right.
We have a long way to go. We need to get to 50%.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's one of the things that I think is important. But like I say, it's not just women. It's representation of all groups in Canada, of all genders, of all backgrounds, of minorities. We need to make sure our parliament is representative.
Yeah, that's I think just hearing you as you're talking about that, when you think about all of what you have to deal with in a day and to have these things, it's like, okay, it was worth it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely.
It was worth it.
Absolutely.
You do it again.
Yeah.
Obviously, you want to do it again.
I'm going to.
And
But when you said, you referred to the Board of Trade, your experience there, and you were kind of saying, that's here.
Yeah.
I disagree, because if you were going to ask me the one thing that I'm most proud of, it's actually that I feel like I have increased representation in our riding, that people feel they can reach out to me,
Yes.
that I get out there, that I talk to people, that people understand maybe a little bit better what the government does, what their MP does.
Yeah.
To me, that representation. And so even if I didn't have any big things I could say, just trying to be a good representative and really feeling like people in Aurora, Oak Ridges, Richmond Hill are having their voice heard.
Yeah.
I joke, one of the things about helping to raise 6 children is, you have a loud voice.
Yeah,
You have a loud voice, right? You can multitask, you have a loud voice. And so in caucus, I'm not shy to make my voice heard.
Oh, I've listened to it, some of it on your posts, and I see some of it. I'm thinking, whew, you're standing up there and you're battling.
Yeah.
And you are representing, and think about all the things that I just keep wondering about. That's what I find so admirable, that you got to worry about like local issues, national issues, global issues. You got to put that all in. You got to pick which order you're going to go in, and then you got to keep your own sanity while you're at this. You still got family. You're still a person, a human being, and that's as a person in that role. That's amazing for just being there. Is like you just said, just being there and being able to. To serve and to play that role.
Well, it's an honor. I have to say it is an honor, and I'm really glad I had the opportunity now. And every day I just go and say, just do the work again, and we'll see what happens next day.
Well, what would you say, like sitting where you are? I mean, I could ask somebody else this about you too, which maybe one day I will. But asking you, you've gone through all this. What about you? How have you felt like you changed? How have you felt like you developed or grew in all of this? Because that's got to be a big enough win too. Your personal growth, your personal development.
Oh, absolutely.
How, in what way would you say?
Oh, there's many ways, but one is, just learning from constituents, right? Every time you talk to somebody, you hear their life experience, you hear what they've been through or what they're experiencing in the moment, and where they've come from. You see the world in a different way, right? So to me, I've learned so much about different cultural backgrounds, about different religions, about different life experiences. From things like going to different religious organizations or institutions, but also women's shelters, seniors' homes, and I love going to
Right,
seniors'
because
homes.
you get now like a little bit of the access,
Yeah.
but you also there's all this discovery.
Right, and it's the stories, right? You get to hear people's stories all the time, and you think, wow. And it for me, it fills me with pride about our country. Like those conversations, and you see how people are struggling too.
Right.
And how some people need help and how we can help. But what I was going to say about the Board of Trade was, my feeling is that when you look at kind of the, if you want to put it in a hierarchy, which I don't even like hierarchies, quite frankly, but if you're going to put it in a hierarchy, I always think, look, the person's first, right? The person's first.
Right.
And then that level of government are those community organizations that touch the most immediately.
Right.
And those are the local ones. Those are the Board of Trades. Those are the mayors and the councillors.
Right.
They are the first and most immediate effect on people, right?
Right.
And then the province. Then I'm here. I'm at the bottom. I'm the Fed. I'm the MP. But what we do in our government and the issues we deal with nationally, internationally, they also affect the person in the riding. They affect people too.
Sure.
It's just not always is immediate. The effect isn't felt right away.
100%.
So those things are really, for me, even when I'm looking at international, like I talked about the war in Gaza, when I'm looking at that, I'm thinking about how does that impact people in my riding, like people who are dealing with anti-Semitism or Islamophobia, or people who have a family member in Gaza, or a hostage in being held.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about how does it affect them. So.
Well, one of our other guests just earlier today, I was telling you, was somebody who, came to this side of the world from Afghanistan, right? And she was like one when she came over, but it affects people.
Absolutely.
Like who are right in your riding there.
Absolutely.
Constantly.
And I just last week was at the airport welcoming a plane of people from Afghanistan. And, I've done that several times. And this time I was actually inside. Thank goodness it was so cold. But it was a different experience.
Even
but
for
you
Canadians.
see these people too. Yeah. And what really I loved about it, Mohammed, was looking at all of the people there in this warehouse that were greeting these people that were coming from Afghanistan. The immigration officials, the CBSA officials, the community volunteers, all different pieces, and the families waiting outside, just people who had sponsored them.
Yeah.
All these different groups coming together. And that is what we do. I mean, we can't do the work we do without the boards of trade, without the community organizations, without the shelters, without the, everything. And Canada does such a good job, I think.
Yeah.
And even despite the huge challenges we're facing, and we are facing big challenges right now, I still think there's no better place to be on in this earth. And I think that, we have to be grateful for that and realize, even though we're struggling, and it's my job to listen to those struggles and to take action to try and address them, that also we are global citizens, and some of the issues that are facing us are not within our boundaries, and our leadership and our participation in finding that solution to the war in Gaza, to finding the two-state solution or to dealing with climate change. Those are really important things that we have to do too. Just like within our communities, those that have more, that aren't struggling with their health or with their economic necessities, are able to help their neighbors. As a country, we have our challenges and we have to put a lot of work into those, but we still are one of the most desirable places for people around the world to come to. Our economy is still strong. We have freedoms. We have so much here. It doesn't mean that the problems aren't a priority, but we have other responsibilities as well. And I think it is our job, our role to ensure. And the last thing I say is that relates back to the constituents, because climate change, you just look in Canada right now, right? The billions of dollars that we've spent on addressing, the atmospheric rivers, the floods, the storms.
You just can't stop taking care of people, can you?
Fires.
I want to talk about you.
The fires.
You talk about taking care of Canada. I'm talking about you.
Okay,
but
so I got I did a 20 minutes.
You're always working.
I did a 20-minute spin class this morning.
I promise
How's that?
you, it's just going to be. Thank you.
I stopped. That. I was working for the morning, and I thought, I'm going for this. I'm going to do my 20-minute spin class and take care of myself.
I told you I was going to challenge you on some things, but
I did it.
That's what I feel like someone's got to look out for you.
Well,
and I'm so glad to know that you did that. You're taking care of yourself, and I'm sure there are people out there, your family and your friends, and your supporters that are like see to it, because you are serving and you're doing work that while others are capable of doing, they didn't step up to the way you have. And I find that when somebody does step up to do it the way you have, like, take care of those people. You're taking care of everyone. We need to take care of you. And I really, really appreciate you coming here.
Oh, thank you.
Taking the time out of all the things you got to deal with in a day and sit with us, right? Like, wow.
Well,
it's huge. I appreciate it very much, Leah.
Well, thank you for what you're doing too, because, and I do feel we had this conversation, but maybe it can help somebody, maybe not. Sometimes I listen to somebody else's story, it helps me.
Well,
so
that's
maybe
what I wanted to
something
ask
positive.
you. Let's say somebody's listening, saying they're looking at the kind of challenges that they have, and sometimes, they might look at what you're dealing with and going, Leah, but my problem is going to seem very small to you, or I don't have your gusto and your strength, and I don't know how to fight a no. And it could be trying to move that needle from 30% to 50% representation. It could be anything. Mm-hmm. What do you say to them?
You're perfect as you are. You are who you are, and you have so many strengths too. Like we don't. Quite frankly, I don't want a world full of Leahs. I appreciate my team in the office.
There are some people celebrating what you just said there.
No,
Oh, come on.
No, seriously. I
Yeah.
think, and that's the thing, is that everybody brings something different, and at different points in our life, we have different. We have challenges that maybe we need more help with, or maybe we can't get the no to a yes on that one. But the next time there will be something else, and I'm a big believer in the universe being benevolent and people being benevolent and energy, that things happen for a reason. And so be kind to yourself. It's like you're saying to me, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. You're not supposed to be anybody else than who you are.
But if they're sitting there, like, let's just say they're saying the time is, how you are, you'd like,
Yeah.
it needs to be done now.
Right.
It can't be, but there's some people waiting for something to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if you had waited for things to happen, imagine, right?
Yeah.
So if someone's waiting for something to be perfect, to be right.
Oh, well, don't wait for that. Don't wait for things to be perfect or right. We wouldn't do anything. Like, you have to believe that everything is perfect or nothing is perfect. It's like things are perfect. And if you have it in you, if you feel you can do it, to push yourself a little bit, to take that next step, do it. If you need help to do it, seek the help. But if your want and your desire is strong enough and you really feel it's important, find a way. You can find a way. And it doesn't have to be you being the most aggressive or the most, pushy, whatever it is. It can just be you being you and being open to receiving help too. And I think often people resist that. They don't want to ask other people, or they don't want to, burden other people or whatever. It's not a burden. It's like, if people are able and willing to help, you're giving them an opportunity. You're giving them an opportunity, right? They can help. And I think everyone has this kind of circularity in their life. I mean, my upbringing was, I was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. People look at me sometimes and they say, oh yeah, it's been so easy. No, like our family, helping other people is more important than making money. Let's put it that way. So,
Well, they could have gone and made way more money doing other things,
Yeah,
right? Like
right.
you said, like, so they passed up.
So, when I went to graduate school, I had 3 part-time jobs when I was at Harvard. People look at it and think, oh, you went to Harvard. I'm like, well, yeah, I worked hard to get in there. I took a year off to work to save some money
Right.
to go.
Right. And even in that year off, people are like, why aren't you in school and all that stuff still?
Working. And at the job I had, I was discriminated against. I was paid less than a man with the same background as me.
Right.
I was paid less.
Right.
I had so many things that happened, but you just kind of go, okay, you believe in it. And I had gotten scholarships from the 2 other schools I was accepted in for graduate programs, and I decided, no, this was the program I wanted to do. I was going to stay there, save money, got some loans from family, I got some small scholarships, and I worked. And, so it's not, like, there are always going to be obstacles, and you can either say, it's too big for me, that obstacle is too big.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like,
Yeah.
the path can seem so long,
Yeah.
so overwhelming.
Yeah.
What do you...
You just say either your desire is big enough, is great enough
Right.
to keep pushing on it,
Right.
or you say, it's not that important, I'll go to plan B. Like, there's another way. And I always believe there is another way. I always believe that too.
Leah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I know, and thank you for your time. And I know this has been
appreciate
all over the place, so you can do with it what
No.
you want. I'm sure it'll be edited heavily. But
We're going to get that part in there, though, right?
no, you can say that too.
No. It's honestly, like, it's fabulous. For us, like, it's a treat to have you here today.